Today, we are going to be studying the lecture number 24, the practice of the cross, what the cross symbolizes. This is a very, very interesting topic as the cross is actually the universal symbol. It has really existed in all cultures and in all times. It is not a properly Christian symbol, as many people believe, since it has existed for thousands of years before the Christian era. Yeah. But today we are going to be delving in what is the real meaning of this symbol and also the type of crosses that exist and that we are going to find in the work of initiation and the meaning of each one of them. Yeah. So to start understanding the cross, we must know that the cross itself is a symbol of sexual union, right? We see that the cross is made up of two pieces of wood, a vertical piece of wood that represents actually the masculine phallus, the active or positive force, that generating element, right? And a horizontal wood that represents the feminine yoni, the passive or negative force, the vagina, right? That receptive element, in which something is created or is disintegrated. So this allows us to see that when these two forces intersect, the feminine and the masculine and the feminine, right? Then a third force is generated, which is a power. And that is a power that can create, um, actually in the universe, but in ourselves, it can create the existential bodies of the being. You can see that that cross is actually creative. Each one of our physical bodies was actually created in a cross, in a union between a man and a woman, right? And the same way, if we want to create ourselves internally, to create those different existential bodies, it is in the cross that we can do so. And also, the cross has a power, or that power can be focused on destruction. And inside of us can be used for the destruction of everything that is impure. That, as we already know, it is our ego, our different eyes or ways of being that comprises our ego. Okay. However, we are going to see that there are three crosses which we will have to take along this path towards self-realization. Here we can see them: the cross of life, the cross of death, and the cross of love. So let's talk of each one of them in detail so we can get to understand them. The first of this is the cross of life. This cross is symbolized by two crossed beams, and this cross symbolizes the sex work, also known as the forge of the Cyclops. Yeah, because there the initiate must temper himself three times. First, by creating his solar bodies in the work of the first mountain that we already explained in the lecture number 10 of the phase B of the self knowledge course. And then he must temper himself in the work of creating the bodies of gold in the work of the second mountain that we already studied in lecture number 11 of this space B, right? And later he must temper himself a third time by creating his bodies of light in the work of the third mountain that we saw in the lecture number 12 of the phase B, right? It is with this cross, as I was saying, that we can create our internal bodies one by one, vertebra by vertebra, making a wise use of our sexual creative energy, going to sex with a stable partner of the opposite sex to make that sexual energy ascend through our spine. We will be creating these bodies. This practice, the practice of the cross of life, is a practice is of a mystical type. And this requires a lot of concentration, a lot of imagination, and a lot of willpower in the work that we are doing. In this practice, we must know that we shouldn't beg for death for our psychological defects, but we should only concentrate and focus the energy on the creation of the bodies if we are practicing the suprasexuality, right? To create our internal bodies. And if we ask for death, during this practice, we are going to be mixing the mystical forces in charge of creation with the revolutionary forces that are the ones in charge of destruction. And if we do so, then a third force will result that will affect us and stagnate the work that we are trying to do. So we must take this into consideration, right? And this practice, the cross of life, is going to be like the priority in the first mountain of initiation, which is the mountain of Genesis, or the creation through the waters. So the most of the sex practices on the first mountain are focused on birth, on creating the solar bodies. Death focused practices will be done during the first mountain occasionally to eliminate big defects or that we have already studied, well understood, or when our inner being internally sent us to carry some defect to the death on the cross. In those cases, we are going to be using the cross of death that we are going to be studying in a moment. And well, actually, for this practice, there are three basic requirements. It must always be present. This practice should be presided over by love, by fidelity, and chastity. So, what is fidelity? That this practice will be carried out with only one stable partner of the opposite sex, right? It shouldn't be a union made for mere personal convenience. So there must be love in that within that partner. It cannot be in a couple in which there are continuous feelings of hatred or resentment. So we must work on ourselves to be developing that love for our partner, right? I'm sorry. And both of the partners on the couple should be seeking to develop mutual respect and that development of love, both of them, right? And in this practice, chastity must always exist. That is, our sexual creative energy will never be lost. The key is the phallus uterus connection without ever ejaculating, without ever spilling the sacred sperm. That is, without ever achieving orgasm and ejaculation, right? And for the practice of the cross of life or the cross of birth, the first thing that we must do is the conjuration of the belly and the magic circle that we learned in the lecture number 7 of the phase A. And that point is very, very important since the suprasexual practice is actually a high magic practice in which, as we can see, two powerful forces are joining together to manage a very powerful energy to make a superior creation, right? So if we don't clean the space in which we are going to do that practice, and we don't close that space correctly when we ahead doing the practice, we will be an easy target for negative entities, for black magicians who are always there seeking to make us fall so that they can feed on that powerful energy. So it is essential to always do the building and the magic circle before practicing the suprasex, in this case, the cross of life, right? Then, after we clean and close the space, we are going to make a plea for resistance to our inner father and to our divine mother to assist us to have a good concentration, to have good imagination, and to have a good will in the practice, because that is absolutely important, right? We must be there concentrated during the practice in our own process, right? We will need to have a good imagination, because it is with our breathing and our imagination, the power of our imagination, that we are going to direct our sexual energy through our spine towards our superior centers, okay? And will is very important so that we overcome the desire to come to expel our sexual energy. So we are going to be asking for help to have these three forces active during the practice. And then we are going to proceed to light the fire with kisses and caresses, conscious kisses and caresses, right? And focus to achieve a good erection in the man and a correct lubrication in the woman. And once we have that correct lubrication and erection, we proceed to the connection of the lingam in the yoni, that is, of the penis into the vagina, right? And there, when that connection is performed, the crust will be formed, right? And then we are going to proceed to the transmutation of the sexual energy through that respiratory process, accompanied by a powerful imagination. Something that we must know is that, well, remember here in the Phase B conferences, we have been taught of the five initiations of major mysteries that we are going to perform in the first mountain of initiation. That we need to regenerate our physical and vital bodies, that we already possess them, they are already full created, but of them we only have we already have them, sorry, but we have them in a degenerated state. So we must do a work to regenerate them. And for the regeneration of those two bodies, we are going to do a process that is known as the best cliff, right? Which consists of bringing the energy to the point between the eyebrows. Now, for the creation of the creation of the other bodies, that is the astral, the mental, and the causal, we are going to be performing a change, right? A different clef that I'm going to explain just in a moment. But let's focus now on what will be. Hi, Angelica, how are you? On what will be the regeneration of those two bodies, the physical and the vital, or what is the first two initiations of the first mountain. What we're going to do is that once we are already sexually connected with our partner, we are going to inhale the air slowly and lengthily through the nose, imagining that this air reaches the lungs, and from there goes down to our sexual gonads. Testicles in men, ovaries in women, right? And at that point, we retain the air. While we retain, we imagine how the sexual energy goes from our sexual gonads to the coccyx and then ascend through our spine like a golden thread that sends vertebra by vertebra until it reaches the point between the eyebrows, right? Making this base cliff. And once there, we exhale the air by pronouncing the mantra E. It's like the vowel I, but with the sound E, slowly and elongated, like E. We must do all this process slowly, trying to reach 20 seconds in each process. 20 seconds in the inhalation, 20 seconds during the retention, 20 seconds during the exhalation, because it is slow, okay? And then what you do, you repeat the breathing and imaginative process. And when you reach the second time the point of exhaling, you are going to do with the mantra ah, like the vowel A, but with the sound ah. Ah. Then you repeat the procedure again, and the third time you exhale with the mantra O, like O, but with the sound O, like O. That way you are transmuting your sexual energy. You are going to be repeating that process as many times as necessary until all the sexual energy is transmuted. But if at any point during the practice you feel that you are losing the sexual potency, that is, in the case of the man, feels he's losing some of his erection, or in the case of the woman, he loses her lubrication, then what we should do, you proceed to make gentle movements, right, to recover the sexual potency and return to the energy transmutation. That is, if, for example, you exhale E and inhale and retain, and the second time and you feel that you're losing the potency, you make gentle movements, kisses and caresses if necessary, and when you feel you recover the potency, you continue. Inhale, retain, upload all that energy, and continue, for example, with the O. Then you go ahead and start once again from the E, then and remember that you are going to be repeating all the breathing process for each one of these mantras, right? And well, this practice will be extended for as long as the couple wishes, or until even by making soft movements, even by performing kisses and caresses, the potency is no longer recovered because all the sexual energy has been already transmuted. Once you feel that you don't have, you no longer have any more sexual energy, then the practice ends. Actually, the success of the practice is always in withdrawing from the practice without ever spilling their sexual energy. Hi, Carla. How are you? And well, that is the practice of the cross of life. And that is the best clef that consists on sending the energy from the coccyx and making this shape here and sending the energy here to this point on the middle of the eyebrows, right? And that is for the first two initiations. When we have already concluded the second initiation of major mysteries internally, we are going to be aware of that process in the internal worlds, right? And we begin with the creation of the solar astral body. That is the third initiation. Then we are going to be carrying out the process of transmuting the energy, but now with the treble clef. That is, we are not going to only carry the energy to the point between the eyebrows, but we are going to make it descend to the heart, coiling it there, right? As performing this treble clef. And not only with the astral body, actually, when we go to create the mental and the causal bodies that are the fourth and the fifth initiation, as they are going to be created, we are going to be performing this treble clef because we don't have them fully created. We have barely an embryo of those superior bodies. And well, why? Why to create? We need to send the energy to our hearts because just as when the fetus of physical body is formed in the mother's womb, the first thing that is formed is the heart, and from there the rest of the body. Likewise with the creation of the internal bodies. For this, we're going to be taking the sexual energy to the heart from the third initiation and on, right? Once sexually connected, I mean, it's going to be like the whole same process, the same cleaning the space, asking for help, and making this or performing this conscious kisses and caresses to reach the sexual potency, the same. But once sexually connected, in this case, we are going to inhale the same slowly, lengthily. Hopefully, each process can be extended for 20 seconds each. And after the air is brought to the sexual gonads, the air is retained, and we imagine the energy going from the gonads to the coccyx and ascending in the form of a golden thread through the entire spine, reaching the point between the eyebrows, and from there descending to the heart and coiling there. And at that point, you exhale with the same sounds, E, right? For the first time, ah, the second time, O, the third time, right? But there, in your heart. It's in the same way, successful will be in withdrawing without ever spilling the sexual creative energy, neither inside nor outside the practice. That is the success of this practice. And well, that is the first cross or the cross of life. And then you have the explanation of both left, right? Well, now let's study the second cross. Remember that if you have any question on this topic or on this explanation, please you can leave your questions down there in the comment box, and we will be gladly solving any question that you have, okay? And well, this second cross, the cross of death. In this cross, what we see an initiate dying during the practice of sex, because remember that the cross is the sexual union. And as I was explaining, sexual power can be used to create or to destroy. That is, to be born or to die. And you can see here that above the head of the initiate, we see the letters I, N, R, I, which are actually the acronym for Ignis Natura Renovatur Integram, that are Latin words that means fire incessantly renews nature. Because this cross is actually showing us an initiate dedicated to the psychological death during the sex work. So, in those moments of infinite happiness during that sexual work, the initiate concentrated on his divine mother, asking for her forgiveness, repentant of his mistakes, is going to be begging her to eliminate the defects that he has already understood. And there he will apply the creative fire for the total disintegration. Actually, this practice is of a revolutionary kind. It requires a lot of concentration, imagination, will, the same in the work that we are going to be doing. To do this practice, it is required to have made a previous study of the defect that is going to be taken to the cross. That is absolutely important. That we don't just take a defect that we don't understand. For us to eliminate the defect, for that process of destruction of that psychological defect to actually take place, we must have a very good, previous study of the defect, very good comprehensions on that psychological defect, right? And well, as I was explaining, this practice is going to be a priority in the work of the second mountain of initiation, which is the mountain of death, right? Since it is through this practice of the cross of death that our intimate Christ will disintegrate all those causal selves and all those infrahuman elements that actually live within us. On the first mountain, remember, we are going to be using this practice, but sporadically, to bring out like major defects, those defects of which you have already make a good prior study, or that your inner being in the astral plane asks you to burn in the fire, or that already take to the cross. Okay, and well, the preparation for the practice of death on the cross is similar to the cross of birth. Wait, let me solve a question that we have here from Carla. She's asking, in a suprasex practice can be done, let's say 15 minutes of the death cross practice and another 15 minutes of the cross of life practice, meaning both techniques in one sexual practice? No. And why not? Because what I was explaining, we are working with a force here, right? We are working or with the mystical force or with the revolutionary force. So we are going to dedicate a whole practice for being born or to die. Two separated practices, not the same, not to mix, because we're going to mix the forces, right? We are not going to, like, for example, 15 minutes end the practice and restart a new practice. No, you're going to be doing, if you do this, you're going to be doing the same thing in the same, both things in the same practice. And that is not correct, because we are going to be mixing the forces. So you are going to be making the cross of death, only that, in that practice, right? Something that, yes, can be done is that, for example, you can be dying in sex, and but at the same time your partner can be being born, or practicing the cross of life, because they are two individual temples, two individual labs, right? It is very good, actually it is perfectly good if both of you work with the same, if both of you are dying, because that will be like a more revolutionary power, But yes, both can be working in separate things, being born or dying. Okay, but not to mix them. And well, thanks, Carla, for your question. That allows us to clarify that point. And what else? Well, the preparation. For the cross of death practice, I was saying is the very same that of the cross of life, Belilin, magic circle, begging for assistance, lighting the fire with conscious kisses and caresses to obtain a good erection in men, a good perfect lubrication in the woman, and then the cross, lingam yoni connection, right? And what you're gonna do, slowly and lengthily, you're going to inhale the air, imagining that it reaches the sexual gonads, right? You're going to be holding the air, and now you're going to imagine the energy, but as a flame of fire that is going from your gonads to your coccyx and ascending along the entire spinal column until it reaches the point between the eyebrows. And once you reach that point, you concentrated on the detail of the defect of which that you want to eliminate. You're going to ask the Divine Mother for its disintegration. And then you're going to release the fire against that defect at the moment that you exhale the air, chanting the mantra INRI, elongated like INRI, right? And then the same process repeated as many times as necessary, and using the same mantra, you're going to be discharging the fire on the different details of the defect that you have understood, right? Of that defect that you have taken to the death of the cross. If sexual potency is partially lost, it can be recovered with soft movements, kisses, and caresses. If the sexual potency is totally lost, the practice ends. Because if you recover the practice, or try to reinitiate, I don't know if that is a correct word, to start over again the sexual practice, you are actually performing a second practice, and that is not correct, because you will be like harming your sexual apparatus. Okay. And well, the success of the practice, same, will be to withdraw from it without ever spilling the sexual energy. And well, that is the second cross, the cross of death, that will allow us to eliminate those very big defects on the sexual practice, right? And let's now see the third cross, or the cross of love. That is the cross of Golgotha. It is symbolized by the cross of St. Andrew. That is a cross like is forming like an X, because it is the cross that the initiate is carrying, right? And that the disciple helps him carry. This cross is actually the symbol of the sacrifice for humanity. It represents the work that we do for the mankind. And it has a great relationship with the work of the third mountain, because remember that the third mountain is the mountain of the sacrifice for humanity. There in the third mountain is where the master must find for a disciple who has already taken the direct path, to leave him in charge of the world teaching, so that he can enter the absolute and stay there. So this is the cross of the sacrifice for humanity. At the beginning, this cross is light to carry, because even though it is like totally important in the third mountain, from the very beginning we need to start carrying that cross. We need to start sacrificing ourselves or humanity, because it is here in this cross that love develops in us, and we need love if we want to advance in this work. It is absolutely necessary, because we only advance in this work, in our inner work, by the merits of our hearts, right? And at the beginning, this cross is very light to carry on our shoulders, but as we advance in our inner work, it actually becomes very heavy. At first, as a sacrifice, what we do, we attend the lectures. That is our first sacrifice. But then we start studying the lectures, reflecting of them, and that itself represents a sacrifice, because it implies taking time away from the personality right? From the pleasures of the personality, for the sake of seeking our own awakening. So that is actually a sacrifice. Then later, what we do, we like add more weight to that cross when we start inviting people to receive this knowledge, when we start, for example, preparing ourselves to directly teach the knowledge, like taking time to practice the conferences with an instructor. And well, as we advance internally, we are going to be committing ourselves to the work of our own inner being, and the weight of that cross is increasing, right? Because each time we are taking more time from the personality and dedicating it to the inner work and to the sacrifice for humanity, but also to fulfill the commitments that we are making to bring knowledge to others in the clearest and the simplest way possible. We are going to be investing our time, right, to purify the knowledge that we already have by practicing the knowledge, right? Because only when we practice, we can give like the knowledge in the most clear and precise way possible, right? So then we are taking our more responsibilities by starting to prepare, for example, our classes, to bring the lectures to it can be over the internet, as I'm doing right now, or in a physical. In a physical place, right? To invite people to show them the lectures. Then we are going to be starting to prepare others that want to now become instructors, right? We are going to be adding more weight to that cross. Then we are going to be doing, for example, international missions, taking the knowledge to other countries, taking the knowledge to other languages, and so the cross becomes heavy and heavier. But it is a cross that, even though it is heavy, it is carried with happiness, because it is carried with love, because actually that give you strength, that give you power, that give you the merits of the heart that you need, and that gives sense to your whole existence. Because actually the sense of all existence, the sense for the being to be, is the beings, is to serve all the beings, to help all the beings so that they can awaken, so that they can also find the purpose of their existence, and they can awaken their consciousness, right, and know themselves. And well, all the consciousness that we are releasing with the psychological death must be taken to put it at the service of humanity. Of course, we are not dying and getting wisdom, comprehensions, corroborations, etc., just to keep it for ourselves. No, it is to share it with humanity, so that they can also develop their own knowledge, by encouraging themselves to also investigate, to also corroborate by themselves, right? Likewise, all the forces, all the powers that we awaken in the birth process must be used to serve humanity, okay? Since love develops there in the works, in the deeds we do in the service of humanity. That is why this cross is so important in the work that we are doing. And well, that is the lecture number 24 of the phase B. That is the real symbolism behind the three crosses related to the esoteric work. And well, here we have another question from Carla. It says, I know it says, thank you for the answer. Okay, Carla. And here we have a question from Godwin, sorry, that says, what's the goal of this sexual practice? Well, we were explaining today, Godwin, two sexual practices, the cross of birth and the cross of death, right? The cross of birth, or going to the sexual practice to create ourselves, it's to create the existential bodies of our being. For example, there is this astral plane. We have explained about that in different lectures. We visit unconsciously that astral plane every time our physical body falls asleep, right? We unfold, our soul unfolds to that fifth dimension or astral world. when we wake up, we tend to say, I was dreaming about this or that. Actually, what we call dreams are experiences on the fifth dimension. We are here in this course, for example, encouraging people to seek to do that process in a conscious way, because in that dimension you can investigate everything, because that is the dimension of eternity. But actually, with what body do you move in that dimension? It is with your astral body, because your physical body is laying down in bed. You are not taking your physical body to that fifth dimension. And of that body, we all only have like an embryo, like a principle that we must develop so that we can go to enter to the fifth dimension consciously every time that we want, because we need to feel that body with energy. And when we practice that sexual transmutation, that cross of birth, when we are there all the time with our partner, making our energy, sexual energy, ascend through our spine to the superior centers, we start a process of regeneration and creation so that we can develop our 7 bodies. We don't have only the physical body, but 7 bodies. And then we have the cross of death, which we already explained in this lecture, that is using the sexual force, the sexual energy, but now not to create, but now for destroying. Destroying what? The ego, the psychological defects that we have inside ourselves, and many of them are very big, okay? During the day, we are there practicing self-observation, asking for death, for the little details that we manage to observe, the same in meditation, right? The same in retrospection. We are all the time there eliminating the small details that we discover, and we are recovering the essences trapped there. But there are defects inside ourselves that are very big, and we use the cross of death to eliminate them with the sexual force. Okay, concentrated, send the fire, and with the mantra Inri elongated, as I was explaining, we are going to eliminate those big defects in sex. And well, that is the purpose of the superior sexual practice. Okay. If you have any other question, please feel free to leave your questions down there. That even though the live broadcast ends, we are always there checking to solve all the questions that you have. Okay. And well, let me invite you to the next conference that we are going to be starting next Saturday, which is the last lecture of the self-knowledge course. And in this, we are going to be learning how to differentiate a white magic temple from a black magic wand. That will be very useful for our internal investigations. That is actually the last lecture of the phase B of the self-knowledge course, because we are delivering the phase A conferences every Mondays and Thursday. And Thursdays we are delivering. And if you're not yet part of our WhatsApp or Telegram groups, you can find the link here to join our groups and receive the phase A lectures. We are going to let you know when we are going to restart with this cycle of phase B lectures that are going to be ending next Saturday. Yeah. And well, thank you very much for attending today's conference. Please remember to leave us any questions that you have, and well, see you the next time. Bye bye. Thank you very much.